What's up, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. Today I want to do an EFI update, kind of a part 2 for the Camaro. Overall it's doing really well, but it hasn't been 100% problem free, so I'll give you guys an update. So I wanted to put some miles on the car before I really gave you guys a part 2 and a kind of overview of the EFI system. So we did obviously get it totally installed. All the fuel pump and fuel lines and everything seem to be working really well. I'll go ahead and throw in a GoPro clip of the first startup right now. Here we go. Oh, it's running. Check for leak. No leaks. So as you can see, we had no leaks to start with, which is awesome. It was my first time making AN lines, so I was a little bit worried about that, but turned out really well. Only thing I did have to do was immediately adjust the linkage. So on the FiTech unit, there's a screw to actually adjust the throttle linkage. And basically what that does is just puts the linkage into the correct position so that the computer can compensate one way or the other to manage your idle speed. So if you remember, I did buy this FiTech unit secondhand, and I guess the person who installed it before had that screw cranked way up, so I couldn't actually get it to idle below like 1500 RPMs if I remember correctly. So I was able to unscrew that, get it to idle at a nice 800 or so when it's warm. So I'm going to take you guys on a drive here in a minute to show you how well it actually runs now. But I want to cover kind of two of the issues, one being a pretty big issue, the other one being pretty minor, and it kind of worked itself out. So when I first drove the car, basically if I was going, say, 50 miles an hour and I was coming up to a red light and I dropped, I put in the clutch and I just let off the gas completely, the RPMs would drop so much that it would actually stall. And I was able to just immediately start the car back up. It did that maybe 2 or 3 times before the ECU learned enough to not do that, so that's not a problem anymore. The biggest issue I'm having, and I'm still actively kind of trying to figure out what the problem is, I believe revolves around my tach signal. So the ECU obviously needs an RPM signal to know what speed the engine is running. And I guess a lot of these aftermarket EFIs, and this isn't necessarily FiTech specific, have an issue with noise on the RPM signal. So mine just comes straight out of my HEI distributor, right where you would plug in a factory tachometer that goes to your dashboard. And basically that wire can, if it's wrapped up in other power wires, the signal can get messed up. I had it like kind of branched off, one going to my tachometer and one going to the ECU. Currently I unplugged the tachometer that's in the car to see if that fixes my problem. But basically what I'm seeing is I could drive the car for 100 miles with no problems. It would run perfectly fine. I turn the car off for a little while and I go back to start it up and it just starts to run super rich, won't idle over about 500 RPMs. It's just pouring gas in. And what I was able to figure out is on the handheld unit, there is in the dashboard section, and I can show you in a little bit, there is a run state. And basically what that run state is, it lets you know, okay, the ECU is in stall, meaning it's off. It's in crank, which means, okay, the engine is starting to, attempt to crank over. And then idle. And what was happening is it wasn't switching from crank to idle, which means it was still pouring in enough fuel to start the engine. But I think because my RPM signal was kind of scrambled a little bit, it wasn't triggering the ECU to say, okay, the engine started now, cut back on the fuel, we're ready to go into like kind of an idle mode. So it was still kind of stuck in cranking mode, even though the engine was actually running, and it was just, like I said, pouring fuel in. It was like a 10-0 air-fuel ratio. But if I revved the engine, it would start to clear up because it was like, okay, it actually needed that much fuel. So I know that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but basically right now I'm kind of driving the car, turning it off for a while, turning it back on to see if it was just that RPM signal that was causing that issue. If not, I'll have to call FiTech directly and see what the deal is. What I can do to fix it if I'm out somewhere is I can actually just resort back to an older backup file for the tune. So it allows you, it automatically creates a backup file every so often. What I can do is just reload the previous tune file, and the car will fire up and run perfectly. So that's how I know it's not like a mechanical problem. It's totally inside the ECU itself, because like I said, if I reset it, it'll run just fine again and not have any issues. So I'll go ahead and fire the car up for you. This isn't a super cold start. I was running the car this morning. We'll see our coolant's already at 140 degrees. So you see it'll idle kind of high for the first, 20 seconds or so, and then it'll go right back down to the 800 RPM idle I have it set at. So far so good. Let me hook up a GoPro and then we'll take this thing on a little ride. Windows a little bit so you guys can hear. Get on it a little bit. It pulls pretty good. Don't mind my rattly dashboard. One of the many things on the list to fix. So one problem I have been kind of noticing that it's getting better, and I think it's just part of the, it trying to tune itself, is the as soon as I pull off the gas, I go to push the clutch in to come up to a red light or something, the RPMs will dip so low that once, maybe twice, I've had it actually stall. It hasn't done that in a while now, but it's still dropping all the way down to 500, 550, and then it'll catch back up to the 800 I have set at. So just something I'm trying to be aware of and conscious of, I guess, in case it happens I can quickly start the car again. But other than that, it's doing really well, so we'll just kind of do a seems to cruise nicely. Gas mileage is pretty terrible, but that's to be expected as it's tuning, because it's going to err on the side of being more rich to be safe. So far so good. Well, we're back from the drive. I haven't looked at the GoPro footage yet, so I honestly have no idea how much of it turned out, how much of it is usable, or if there's crazy wind noise or anything. So hopefully fingers crossed. We got some good driving footage. I was able to get on it and, I mean, row through the gears up to probably 80-90 miles an hour, something like that, and all's going well. So I still have a vibration, and I've looked at it before, and again, I don't know if you could hear me in the video earlier, and I think I've narrowed it down to this right rear axle. I thought it was the tire and wheel at first, because that's where I could like see a little bit of like out of roundness. Basically, I jacked up the back end, went all the way to 4th gear, and then just had this tire spinning and was looking at it. But I took the wheel and tire off and did it again, and I could still see it moving. So I think either the axle flange itself or the whole shaft or something is bent on that side. So basically, I'll probably make a video in the next week or two of pulling that axle out and checking it. One, so we can measure it and see about getting a replacement. And two, because if it's ends up being more than that, honestly, I'm probably just going to order the 9-inch I want for this car anyway. I found a guy that's going to build me a 1200 horsepower capable 9-inch with limited slip and everything for a really good price. So I don't want to spend too much on fixing this open diff 10 bolt when, you know, we could just go to a 9-inch. So we'll see. Again, I'll include that in another video. But so far, she seems to be doing really, really well. That's what I'm going to call it for this week's video, guys. Hopefully it turned out all right. I don't know what that GoPro footage looks like. Fingers crossed we got some good driving footage, which I want to get some more of. The car is finally getting to a point where we can really drive it and go out and beat it up a little bit and have some fun. And I'm sure that'll lead to us discovering more and more problems as we go, but that's kind of the fun of it is, you know, we go out and beat it up, break something or find a problem, and then, you know, have an opportunity to make it better. And I do want to, as I've said 100 times, so you probably don't believe me, but I want to start making more and more Camaro content, autocrosses, all kinds of stuff. We're heading into fall now, which in Texas is prime driving time, which means I'm also going to get some motorcycle riding time in too. We got some things I want to do on the Triumph, and we just got a lot of good stuff coming on the channel soon. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys soon.